Okay, hi everyone. This is just going to be a short lecture. This is the lecture for class 6. The purpose of this lecture is to tell you or to teach you how to do a close reading. And this is what we're going to do for the first compulsory reading for my section of the course, which is Utopia and the Philosophical Status of Constructed Space by Françoise Choay. I discussed this essay and its content in detail in the last lecture. So if you haven't watched that, go back and watch it. And if you haven't read the text yet, this lecture should give you some pointers on how to do a close reading. And even if you have read it, maybe read it again, because I really want us to use this first text to perhaps go over, if you haven't done it before, how to do a close reading of a text and how it can help you develop your essays. Okay, so in class this week, as usual, I'd like to do a show and tell. I'd like to see the animations you've been working on and make a list of the problems we've encountered. And then we will have a class discussion on this lecture, and we'll do the close reading exercise, and we will look at the essay questions, and we'll also do a writing exercise together. And then I'll introduce the next steps for our development in Blender. Okay, so a close reading exercise. Basically, the point of doing a close reading is to, squeeze as much out of a text as possible, understand how the text works, what techniques of writing is being used, and how the major ideas communicated by the author. So my tips, you definitely have to read the entire essay before class. Read it with a pen or a pencil or a highlighter, or if it's on PDF, use the highlighting tool. Look for key words and key phrases, things that you think might be important. Force yourself to pay close attention. And as you're reading, ask yourself, how does each section of the text relate to the other sections before and after it? And how do these sections fit together to communicate an idea? This is what's called analyzing the text. And in this text, you'll see that it's split up into 6 sections. There's a very short abstract. It's a kind of a paragraph that is introducing what the text is about. And then the author has split it up into 5 subsequent sections: a section on Thomas More and space, a section on utopia as mythic form, then utopia in the 21st century, then the case study example, which is an Italian utopia, and then her conclusion, which is called The Truth of Utopia. And so what we're going to do in class is we're going to analyze each section and critique each section. So when we analyze, we're really looking for information. We're studying something closely. We want to know, what is the section about? What's the structure of ideas inside the section? And what are the key sentences that express the most important ideas of the section? And then when we critique, we want to go beyond the analysis and ask a higher level question, such as, how does this section contribute to the overall idea of the article? Okay. And then what the purpose of this close reading exercise is to help you get into the right mode for developing your research essay, because that's something that we want to start thinking about as we get closer to the research presentation, which is coming up in week 8. So, if you look on the syllabus, you'll find these 3 research questions. And I want to point out to you the way that we've used language in phrasing these questions. You're going to see words like analyze and critique in some way in all of the questions. So the first essay topic is the spatial imagination is a critical part of how we understand our present and imagine our future. Analyze and critique 2 examples where the spatial imagination is used to change how we see the world or how we might reorganize the world around us. These examples might include artworks, games, literature, films, works of architecture and theory, and so on. So this, we've discussed many examples so far that could be used as case studies in this question, but also you can find case studies of your own that you think are interesting. The second question, choose at least 2 relevant case studies to analyze and critique how space is used to articulate possible new social, architectural, narrative, and experiential spaces. You may discuss specific artistic practice, composition, installation, or intermediate practices, or specific artists or works. And the third question, how does repetition function within virtual and physical space? This question can be interpreted in different ways, through signs and connotations derived from the familiar or the mimetic, to nostalgia and post-internet art, suburban city planning, looping video installations, GIFs, memes, pop music, etc. Choose 2 or more examples to analyze and reflect on these topics. So question number 2 is written by Cedric, and question number 3 is written by Daniel. So you can discuss these questions more closely with Cedric and Daniel. But what I want to point out is that all of us use this analyze and critique language. And so I just want to try to make that very clear what we mean by this. Okay, so when we analyze and criticize, it's sort of like a 2-step process. To analyze something is when you look closely at the formal and structural qualities of the case study. This is where a close reading exercise might be done. Close reading can be done on any text, and a text doesn't have to be written. A text can be an artwork, it can be a film, and so on and so on. And what you're doing is you want to look very, very closely at something in the analysis phase, making observations of the formal structure. It's, if it's an artwork, its compositional features, its historical features, its biographical features, who made it, when was it made, and so on and so on. These are kind of its analysis is making observations and searching for new detail. So it can be quite descriptive. The second phase, which is very important, is to criticize. And so the critique phase is when we take all of the observations that are generated in the close reading and we synthesize or we invent a new critique based on the observations. We're trying to make a new understanding of the case studies and relate this new understanding back to the essay question. So that's why all of the essay questions ask you to analyze and critique your case study. If you just analyze something, if you just describe something, it doesn't really get anywhere and it can't really answer a question. You need to critique it as well. You need to take these observations and repurpose them back to a response that satisfies the essay question. So this 2-part analyze and criticize is an important thing to understand. If we read an essay where you're just describing something, then it's not going to be a very good essay because it lacks that critique where we produce a new way of understanding. Otherwise, it's just a kind of boring description. Okay, so therefore, if we think about what would be a weak versus a strong essay response, a weak response to an essay task, such as analyze and critique, will just be a description of the case study and then restating the essay question. If you go through your case studies and just describe what they are, that's not really going to satisfy the essay question. A strong response will go beyond the description of the case study and will reveal new insights into the significance of the case studies and how they can lead to a deeper understanding of the original essay question. These insights and new understandings will form the overall thesis of your essay. Okay, so making a thesis. A thesis is, I guess you could say colloquially, it could be the theory that's being developed by you in the essay. It's what you're trying to say. It's the point that you're making. So these are just some other structural things that I want to bring to your attention. So usually if we're talking about, and when we're talking about essays, we have words like subject, topic, and question. They all have quite different meanings. The subject of your essay will be the broad category that it fits into, like architecture or art or sound or history or something like that. The topic is a much more narrow example within the subject, such as utopian architecture or spatial sound. A thesis is the critique that you have put together, that you have synthesized through your analysis of the case studies. So it's the point that you're making. The thesis is the overall new argument that you want to create based on your research, and it constitutes your response to the initial essay question. The thesis is the glue that holds the essay together. It's the argument that you're making, and it's the reason that justifies why you look at the examples that you look at, and really why all of these paragraphs are put together in the first place. As you engage with your readings and your source material, you should be able to develop a thesis or a reading or an argument that structures your writing. I suggest that you don't have to have a thesis when you start doing your research, when you start learning about your case study. It's more, once you've picked something, you should look closely at it and analyze it, and then learn something about it that you think is interesting and that constitutes a response to the essay question. I don't suggest already having an argument in your head that you just want to prove is true, because then you tend to just look for things that prove your point and ignore things that don't prove your point. And you can usually, this is usually quite clear in the way that you're writing. It's much better to choose something that you just want to learn more about, and then as you do an analysis, you will find something interesting that then will come out in your critique, and this will form the thesis of the essay. So one thing I also suggest is that you should always assume that the reader will disagree with your thesis. And if you assume this, then you have to convince the reader that all of the things that you've analyzed prove that the thesis is reasonable and can be believed. So if you assume that the reader will disagree with your thesis, you can overcome this by providing evidence that justifies the thesis that you present to your reader. So these are kind of the main points that I want to make in this lecture, and I'm going to put links in the description of this video to some articles that go into a little bit more detail. Okay, so what we're going to do in class is I'm going to divide you randomly into groups, and you're all going to analyze and critique a different section of the text. And then we're going to all share these in a document together. And then after that, we're going to brainstorm some case studies and essay responses. So we'll talk about which essay question you might want to write your essay on and what case studies you might use. And then finally, we're all going to do a writing exercise together. Oh, yes. So, sorry, I thought that said we're going to write an essay together. No, we're going to write an essay abstract together. So the abstract is a very short piece of text. And, you know, because we're going to do it in class, it doesn't have to be great. We're making it up on the spot. It's really just to get you in the habit of starting something from nothing and of writing this particular type of paragraph that has a very clear structure that describes what's going to happen in the essay. So I'm going to use an essay abstract writing template and show you what all of the sentences in an abstract are supposed to do. And hopefully this should help everyone get started on their research essays. But the main thing you have to do before class is do a close reading of the text. Read the text in your own time, and then we're going to work on this together. Okay, so this is the text. If you haven't read it already, you can find it on Moodle or in our Google Drive. Okay, I'll see you all in class. Bye.